Excuse me. Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you. Do you mind if I just... Oh. Yes. Yeah. Right, are we ready, dude? Are we ready? We're ready. Hello, a couple of years ago I made a video about choosing between a campervan and a caravan. I'll leave a link to that video in the description below. It's still very current. However, since then I've been away on a few motorhome trips, and I thought now is a really good time, with a lot of new people coming into the hobby, to do another video reviewing that. And we're going to throw motorhomes into the mix. We're going to look at campervans, motorhomes and caravans, and we're going to see what are the advantages and disadvantages of each, so that if you are considering buying one and you don't know where to start, this is a great place to start. First of all, what do we mean by campervan, motorhome and caravan? So a campervan, we're going to look at basically van conversions. They could be tiny, they could be your classic VW with the extending roof, or they could be larger van conversions with a fixed washroom and a higher roof. A motorhome is a van chassis and it's got a coach built body on it, so they've generally got a little bit more room, a little bit better insulated, a little bit more boxy, a little bit bigger. And then finally a caravan, well, in the UK that's pretty self-explanatory. It's something that you tow. In an attempt to try and make them a little bit cooler, some manufacturers are now trying to call them other things, like camping crossover vehicle, it's a caravan. Or beautiful Airstreams, the beautiful lovely silver bullet. In the UK they're trying to call them travel trailers. It's still a caravan. And yes, I am channeling Jessica Kellgren-Vozard. So I've got a wide experience of all three kinds of vehicle. In the UK, collectively, we call them leisure vehicles. In the United States, you probably heard they call them recreational vehicles. So we're going to kick off with 5 pros and cons of a campervan, and we're going to start off with the advantages. And number 1 is the agility of a campervan. You can basically go where your fancy takes you on the journey. So if you fancy going down some country lane, you can, which you wouldn't want to with a larger rig. They're easier to maneuver around town, around the city. And that brings us on to the second advantage, which is that they are, because of their more compact nature, they are more viable to be your only vehicle or for your second vehicle, whereas a motorhome might be too big. Third advantage is a campervan can be very versatile. You can use it as a day van when you're out visiting people. You might, if it's got its own washroom, then obviously you're going to have your own toilet facilities with you. You've got your bed with you. And in this current situation, post-lockdown, where we're all physically isolating from each other, that could be a really useful thing, to be driving around with your kitchen and your washroom with you. Fourth advantage, well, campervans are cool. They are cool by their very nature, and you don't need a VW campervan to be cool. They are just cool. And then finally, one of the best advantages of a campervan is that you have a wide choice of camping areas. You can use the Airs over in mainland Europe, which are free or reduced price parking areas in a wide variety of places like towns and cities and villages. And as I say, quite often they're free. I've stayed on a few myself. Check out some of the videos in the description below on some of the tours. And they're a great asset. You can't stay in them in a caravan, so the fact that you can also go wild camping where it's permitted in a campervan is ace. Now we move on to some of the disadvantages of a campervan, and number 1 is that they can be eye-wateringly expensive to buy. All that technology and space and cleverness and design comes at a price, and yeah, they're not cheap to buy. However, again, you are getting a great amount of use out of a camper van, especially if you can use it as a day van. Like I say, you can easily spend the same kind of money on a very flash car, and at the end of the day, that flash car, it won't have a kitchen. Campervans by their very nature can be cramped and with very little storage on board, so that's something to be aware of when you're actually on site. Now if you're at a show or if you're in a showroom, a campervan can be really attractive and you get all the neat little cupboards. You think, oh, this is really cute and neat. Very different when you've been on a site for 7 days and it's been raining non-stop and you've got 2 children who are very bored and very, very screaming. So think about, how would I feel in this space if I couldn't get out? And because of that crampedness, they are a weather dependent kind of thing. They work really well when the weather's good and when it's sunny, but when it's not so good, it's not so good in a campervan. And finally, the insulation in a campervan is not as good as in a coach-built motorhome or caravan. So even though you can use them in the winter, and I have used them in the winter, they're okay. They just don't retain the heat as well. They don't heat up as quickly as a coach-built product like a caravan or motorhome. So now we'll talk about motorhomes, 5 advantages, disadvantages of a motorhome, and starting off with the advantages. Number 1, over a campervan especially, is you've got more space in a motorhome. You can get very small, compact motorhomes that are really cleverly designed, but generally because of their coach-built nature, you can get more space in a motorhome, especially worthwhile if there's sort of more than 2 of you. Unlike caravans, motorhomes and campervans are easy to set up on site. Yes, you still do have to fill them up with water, but they are easier to set up on site. They can be less easy to level than a caravan, but generally it's handbrake on, turn the driving seats around and you're done. A motorhome offers a little bit more comfort than a campervan and a similar level of comfort to a caravan. So you may have a nice lounge in a motorhome and just room to stand up, room to get dressed, elbow room, and maybe a bigger washroom. So you've got more comfort in a motorhome. Like a campervan and unlike a caravan, with a motorhome you've got a wider choice of sites because you can use airs, motorhome airs, over in mainland Europe, the Stellplatz and so on. Also, some sites don't allow caravans, they only allow vans and sometimes motorhomes, so you have a wider choice of places to stay with a motorhome. And finally, as I touched on in the campervan section, one of the advantages of a coach-built motorhome is the fact it generally has superior insulation versus a campervan. So it will be better in cooler weather, it will heat up quicker, it will retain the heat longer, and if you're burning gas, it can actually be cheaper to heat a larger motorhome than it can be to heat a smaller campervan. Now, the main disadvantages of a motorhome, number 1 is the cost. They can be quite costly. They can start at a really reasonable price, but generally you're still looking at a little bit more than a car and caravan combination. Number 2 is because of their size and they're more comfortable, that means you lose the spontaneity that you have with a campervan. So if you are touring and you do fancy going down a little narrow track, you might think, oh no, the motorhome's just a bit big, a bit too wide, a bit too high to go down there. So you're losing that spontaneity because of the comfort you're having on board. Now, if you're on a campsite or in an air or something, you have less freedom when you're there than you would, say, with a campervan or with a caravan. Some people tow cars with their motorhomes. I'm not going to go there this time. Some people take bicycles with them, which is a great idea. Some people use public transport when they're away in their motorhome. That's not something we're sort of encouraging to be used right now, is it? It will be again, hopefully, in the future. But really, you're not as free when you're on site with a motorhome than you are if you've got a caravan and car or if you've got a campervan. And of course, when you want to move off, you've got to pack everything away. You can't just go off and leave the washing up out because it'll fall off the edge and crash. So you've got to pack everything away before you leave site, just to go to the supermarket or go out for the day. One disadvantage of both motorhomes and campervans is security. When you're leaving the vehicle unattended at a car park, whether you take it to a railway station or to a beauty spot, if you're going to a park or something like that, if you're leaving it unattended, you've got everything in there. You've got your computer and maybe your camera gear and all your essential equipment is all on board, and you are at the mercy of the security of the car park. Whereas if you had a caravan, you can leave your stuff in the caravan on a secure campsite and you can empty your car of valuables. You can't do that with a motorhome or a campervan. You've got everything on board, so if you are leaving it at a public car park, you may be worried about the security aspect of your bits and pieces on board. And then finally, with a motorhome, also with a caravan, storage. Where are you going to put it? Do you have room for it on your drive? Because generally motorhome's a little bit too big to use as your only vehicle, as your second vehicle. It won't get as much use as a camper van because they're not as agile. Therefore, you may have to store it. You may have to find somewhere to store it, and you may have to pay to store it there. And then finally, we move on to caravan and the advantages and disadvantages of that. And we start with the advantages, of course, and that is the first one, the main one, is that they are the cheapest option of the three, especially if you've got a car that's already suitable to tow. Yes, of course, you can spend more on a caravan than you can on a camper van. And of course, yes, you have your car to consider, but generally, when all is said and done, a caravan outfit is generally cheaper to buy than a camper van or a motorhome. And then one of the great things about going away with a caravan is that once you're on site, you've got the use of your car. So you can go out and about for day trips. You're not encumbered by packing everything away. You're not worried about security. You've got the use of your car when you're on site. In a caravan, you have space. You have space just like you do in a motorhome. They're far more family friendly, and you can sometimes zone them off. They've got 2, sometimes 3 rooms in a caravan. So you have all that space, which can make for a far more relaxing time away than being cooped up in a tiny little space. Combined with that space, you've got superior insulation, so that will increase your touring season, maybe even all year round. So you can take longer holidays outside the summer, and even if it rains all week, you've got a lovely heating and good insulation, double glazing, you've got space. You have a far less miserable time than you would if you were, say, in a camper van and it was raining all week. And then finally, one thing that people generally don't think about, which is a huge advantage with a caravan outfit, is the comfort on the journey. By their very nature, campervans and motorhomes are built on commercial vehicle chassis. Therefore, they are commercial vehicles. Now, commercial vehicles these days are very comfortable, they're very smooth, they're very quiet. They're far removed from the commercial vehicles of 20 years ago, but they are still a commercial vehicle. And they're still not as quiet or as comfortable or as smooth as a car. Therefore, on a long journey, if you're going down to the south of Spain and taking you 2 or 3 days to do it, it's far more comfortable to do it in a car than it is to do it in a motorhome or camper van. So if you're towing a caravan with your car, you have far more comfort on the journey. Now, some disadvantages with the caravan. The first and foremost, the most obvious elephant in the room is the fact you got to tow it. Yeah, no denying it, you got to tow a caravan. Many people who are slightly apprehensive about towing, as soon as they do it, then they wonder what on earth they were worried about. Both the Caravan and Motorhome Club and the Camping and Caravanning Club do some great towing courses, so you can go off-road with an instructor in a controlled environment and practice towing, and that's well worth doing if you are apprehensive about towing. But yeah, number one, you've got to tow a caravan. Number two, just like a motorhome, you've got to store a caravan, and most covenants on houses won't allow you to do that at the house. You may have to rent storage somewhere, find storage, pay for it, so you've just got to think about where you're going to store your caravan. Towing a caravan means that you have less journey than you do in a camper van or a motorhome. So if you do see that lovely little tea room, or you see that wonderful little beach down at the end of a road, you're not going to go down there if you've got a caravan in tow, because you're just going to think, oh my goodness, what if I get stuck in that car park? What if I get stuck down the end of that lane? So with a caravan, you generally go A to B. And then when you've got to B and you've sighted the caravan, then you go out in the car. So there's less journey with a caravan than there is with a camper van or a motorhome. You have fewer sight and wild camping options with a caravan. Yeah, they exist, but generally there are plenty of caravan sites around. But some of the little smaller private sites, some of the more quirky ones, the more sort of niche sites, some of them only allow tents and camper vans. Some of them don't allow caravans. And I've been very disappointed sometimes where I've had a caravan, I've wanted to use a nice little quirky site on a farm or something, and they've said no caravans. But generally it's not too much of a problem, but you don't have such a wide choice of sites with a caravan than you do with a camper van. And then finally, of course, quite obvious, setting up. Even though it is easier to level a caravan than it is to level a motorhome or camper van, when you're on site, you've still got to unhitch the thing. When you've got to hook up again, you've got to align it, you've got to put the legs down and go and get the water and bits and pieces. So it does take a bit longer to set up on site. It's a bit more of a faff. You've got to reverse it onto the pitch and so on. So yeah, it takes a bit longer to set up when you're on site. So now just to sum up, because after all that you're probably confused. I'm confused and I wrote the script. So here is a little summary between the three. So a campervan is all about the journey. It's ideal as your only vehicle. It specialises in short trips. It's more weather reliant, but you have a wider choice of camping options. A motorhome is touring in comfort. It's less agile but more comfortable than a campervan. It gives you a longer touring season because of the better insulation, and it's more limited when you're on site than say a caravan or a campervan because it's more of a faff to pack down and go out for the day. A caravan is less about the journey, but it's more about the destination, and it's more about comfort. It's better suited for longer stays than a campervan, and you have the flexibility of the car, both to make the journey more comfortable and for day trips when you're out and about on site. So really they're your options, and there is no one choice that's better than the other because it's all about you. It's about what you want, what your needs are. It's not about the vehicle. As I say, a caravan is not better than a motorhome. A campervan is not better than a caravan. Nothing is better than the other. They're all unique. That's why there is such a big choice. It's all about you and your specific needs. So this has just been a little introduction about the three kinds of vehicles you might want to consider. Now, another thing to be very mindful of is what you are entitled to drive or to tow. And for that, I'm going to direct you to the Caravan and Motorhome Club page. The link is in the description below, and that tells you about when you passed your driving test and what you may legally drive in terms of campervan, whether it's up to or over 3.5 tons, and about towing a caravan, again, how much you can tow depending on when you passed your driving test. So rather than bamboozle with you that now, I'm going to leave a link to that page in the description below. Also, I'm going to link to a few YouTube channels and playlists of my own so that you can go a little bit deeper into this. Now, I've done some trips in all three kinds of vehicles, so I'm going to leave those playlists of those trips in the description below, so please check them out. Also check out some of my reviews, because even if you're not interested in the vehicle that I'm reviewing at the time, it will give you ideas, pointers, things to look at when you're out buying your first leisure vehicle. And then finally, some of my favourite YouTube channels for people who are thinking of taking the plunge. First of all, if you're thinking of doing your own conversion and building your own campervan from a van and doing your own, then do check out Vandemonium, David's channel. That's fantastic. Also, do check out Nate Murphy. He's got a lovely channel as well. Really good, very popular, and he's done a great conversion too. So check those out. If you're more interested in motorhomes and van conversions, then there are three channels I'd really recommend you check out. Number one is A Bus and Beyond, Sean and Lizzie, and soon Plus One and Bentley. They have a VW California. They've done some great reviews on panel van conversions. And then also check out Bob Earnshaw. Bob and his wife Jenny, they've got a lovely channel. They do a lot of motorhome focused content. You'll find a lot of value in Bob Earnshaw's channel. And then finally, on the motorhome front, a really interesting channel to follow is going to be Here We Tow. Jules and Karina, they've just finished a couple of years caravanning. They've just sold their caravan and they're going to go now to a motorhome. So we're going to get first hand how they've got on from transitioning from a caravan to a motorhome. So that's going to be really interesting. So give them a follow too. Finally, if you're into caravans, there are two channels I'd like to recommend. Number one, of course, the daddy of them all, Dan Trudgeon. He's got some great beginners tips on his channel, and things that you're too frightened to ask, like how do you operate the toilet, things like that. So give Dan Trudgeon a follow. And then finally, Lost Weekends, my pal Phil and his wife Juliet. They've got a lovely channel. They've been caravanning a couple of years, and Phil's got some fantastic beginner tips on his channel. And with his background, he's got a professional background that he's applying to caravanning, so please give Lost Weekends a follow too. Again, links to all these channels in the description below. And of course, once you start watching those videos, YouTube will start suggesting things that you'll probably find interesting, and you can rabbit hole for days and days and days, and why not, because that's all part of the fun, isn't it? So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful. if you have any burning comments of your own, anything you would like to share with people who are considering and they still can't choose between a camper van, a motorhome or a caravan, please leave that in the comments below this video, and so people can share your knowledge, share your comments, and hopefully help out those people who are just bewildered by the amazing choice we have of leisure vehicles in this country. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do, folks. Please give us a thumbs up, subscribe if you don't already, and it just leaves me to say from Dougal, excuse me folks, excuse me, yeah, Dougal, your public are waiting. So from Dougal and from me, thanks for tuning in. Dougal, you could have come up and said goodbye. Really, Dougal? He never smiles.